Let's now have a look at some critical issues in understanding your high-tech customers. When you are creating your customer persona and you are developing your products or services to cater for your high-tech customers, there are three factors you must take into account. The first is the factors that affect their purchasing decision. So what elements do they consider in their lives, in their experiences amongst their peers, when they actually make the decision to buy or not to buy your products or services? What different questions do they ask? What things do they take into account? Then you must look at the factors that determine who your desirable customers are. So what makes up the characteristics, the demographics, the likes and dislikes of your customers? Where do they live? Where do they hang out? Why would they buy something that you are selling? And the third are factors that affect the timing of their purchase decisions. So even though you make a product or service that they are likely to buy, sometimes it's purely a question of timing. Maybe they don't see it to be relevant now, but it will be relevant later. And what factors actually constitute what is now and what is later in the lives of your high-tech customers. So that's an overview of how to understand your high-tech customers. Now let's look at what we'll actually be discussing today. So we'll talk about the customer purchase decisions. So what are the factors that determine what makes a customer decide to buy or not to buy? And we'll break down the idea of the customers that are actually early adopters or not adopting at all, the different categories of adopters, and the chasm. We'll look at how you choose a customer target and the process of market segmentation. We'll also look at some strategies to avoid obsolescence. So how can you keep your products and services interesting to all of the different factors, all the different sections of the adopters, and make sure that you're catering to them at all times. So let's start off with the factors that affect the rate of adoption. So first of all, you have the relative advantage. So what are the benefits of adopting the new technology compared to costs? So when somebody decides to make a purchase decision and buy your product or service, what benefit do they have for the price they're about to pay? So in the very early stages, your product or service may be very expensive, potentially, when you have a small pool of customers. So with the customers that you're targeting, what benefits do they have? What good is this product or service bringing into their life that will actually justify what they're spending? So for example, if you think about the new versions of the iPhone that are released, and the day the iPhone is released, the new version, there are queues and queues of people outside an Apple store ready to buy this iPhone. These people are the early adopters, and they are thinking about the benefits they'll be receiving when they buy this new technology. And it's a very expensive technology, so they find a way of justifying that cost. What benefits do you think these individuals will be experiencing? It could be things like they want to remain on trend and fashionable, they want to be a trendsetter. Maybe it's an ego thing, they want to show everyone that they have the new iPhone. Perhaps it is the actual apps and the functionality of the phone. Maybe they want to take better photos, or they want to take more interesting videos, or they want to have everything that they can do on their laptop on their phone. So there are many benefits that they will be thinking about when they decide to pay for this technology. So what relative advantage does your product actually give to these adopters? Also look at the implications. So you have to understand the customer's perceptions of benefits versus the costs. So it's when you create a product or service, you're quite close to it, and you will automatically outline all the benefits from your perspective as a producer. But actually getting into your customers' heads and understanding their perceived benefits is much more an advantage when you're a marketer, because then you can accurately and more intelligently market this product or service to your target customers. Then let's look at compatibility as a factor that affects the rate of adoption. When you look at your product or service, how similar is it to existing ways of doing things? So if we take the iPhone, the new iPhone, whatever version we're on now, how does it compare to other versions of the iPhone plus other similar smartphones out on the market? So you have to look at what benefits does your product have above the other existing products in the market. And also, how compatible is your product to cultural norms? So where are we in terms of culture? And does your product fit in with a narrative your customers are already telling themselves? And also look at the implications. So if the compatibility is low, how will you educate your market? So for example, when the first iPod was released many years ago now, it was a very new concept to have so much music on one device. And Apple at the time were creating a new market for this product. And it was a very novel way of doing things. It's a quite unique thing to do. There are not many companies or many products that create a new market just because this product exists. And so to educate the market, Apple had to create a slogan, a line, a narrative that will help the mass market understand what they've been missing. So nobody came to Apple and said, I want to have a device that holds all my music in my pocket. Nobody said that. People were quite comfortable with having a limited amount of memory to carry their music around with them, or having a disc player where they could actually carry their CDs around with them. And Apple decided to say that in this device, when you have it with you, it means you have all the music that you own in your pocket. And it was a narrative that meant that they were educating their customers because the compatibility of their product currently or at that time was very low. Also, let's look at the complexity. So is your product or service very difficult to use if it's new? And what's the implication of that? So if it is difficult to use, can you first simplify it? So when you're releasing it into the market, can you simplify it first and then create a more complex product later once it's been adopted? Or can you actually educate your customers on the use of the product so they don't find it difficult and they adopt it early? And also, you have to look at your ability to communicate the benefits of the product. So is it easy to explain? Can you communicate the benefits easily to the customer so they understand them? Or if you're over explaining, then you have to look at how can we meaningfully convey the compelling reason this customer has to own this technology? So not meaningfully to you, but meaningfully to them. So what words do you have to use that the customers will be using in that every day? What language, what stories are you telling that the customers are going to relate to quite easily, and they can see how your product or service fits quite neatly into their lives? Then let's look at observability. So how easily is a customer able to assess the benefits of your product or service themselves? What about the ability of others to observe the customer's benefits that they receive from owning the product and using the product? So this is how your product ends up marketing itself through its customers. So for example, Facebook is an example of a service and a platform that has very easily observable benefits from your customers using that particular platform. So for example, when I start using Facebook, I will send a Facebook friend request to somebody who's already on Facebook. If they're not, I will actually contact them and say, hey, you on Facebook? If you're not, then you're going to miss out on all these great benefits. So the person that I'm speaking to that's missing out on all the great benefits is able to observe the benefits I obtain from using that particular service. So the implication is that if the benefits are not easy to observe, then your rate of adoption will be slow. So if I don't see the benefits myself, I'm not going to tell anybody else about this product. But if it's very, very difficult for other people to observe me using your product, then you'll be having quite a battle in actually getting your product out into the market. So these 5 factors we talked about are quite crucial hurdles to overcome when it comes to marketing your product or service effectively. So you as a marketer of your product have to find a compelling reason for adoption of your product and allow the customers to easily overcome their fear, their uncertainty, and their doubt about this product, especially when it's new. So traditional marketing methods that assume customers understand how useful a product is and they can evaluate themselves don't often work in this situation. And when it's a new product, you have to focus on educating the potential customers on their benefits and how to use the product. So when smartphones were released, or even cell phones, mobile phones were released, in the very early years. They were new to the market. People were accustomed to having fixed line phones where they couldn't move away from the wall to use the phone, and they had to be educated on how to use that phone and realize that the benefits are many. Let's now look at the categories of adopters. So you actually have two extremes on here, and then you have a bunch of adopters in the middle. So we're going to talk through each of them independently, but as an overview, on the one extreme, you have innovators. These people are technology enthusiasts. They are the ones that will actually create the need for this technology to exist. Then you have the early adopters. These people are the visionaries, and they're the ones that will be the first ones to actually buy your product or your service and rave about it to everyone. They typically do that with many products and services anyway. Then you have the early majority. These people will look at the early adopters, will look at the benefits they have, and they will use your product with, and that's where you get to mass market. Then you have the late majority. These people are the ones that will wait for the product to actually gain some traction, see that it's working, and then they will use the product. Then you have the Lagards. These are the skeptics. They typically have to be pushed very hard to buy your product, and they end up maybe not even buying it. So let's go through each of these in a bit more detail. So the innovators, first of all, the technology enthusiasts, they appreciate technology for the sake of technology. They are intrinsically motivated by the idea of being an agent of change. They are not too bothered about initial glitches. They forgive you for a product that isn't 100% perfect. They are happy to develop makeshift solutions, and they're willing to be beta testers, alpha testers, and they work quite closely with the tech personnel, the actual developers, and those that are developing the technology. They actually provide marketers with early revenue, but they're not a large group. So they're very good at giving you some money in order to test a new technology because they're really interested in it, they're very excited about it. But the group is actually quite small, so you can't rely on them on revenue because they simply either are very difficult to find or there aren't many of them. And the reason why these people are important is because they are the gatekeeper to the next group of adopters. So they will be the early enthusiasts. They're the ones that will talk to the early adopters and show them that this product or service is great to have. So the next stage is the early adopters. And these people are the visionaries. They're the ones that want to revolutionize competitive rules in their industry. And they are typically attracted by high risk, high reward projects. They're the ones that will be the one in line buying the iPhone. Okay. They're not exactly price sensitive. Okay. So they will pay above what everybody else will pay in order to experience this new technology. But also they demand very customized solutions and very intensive tech support. So even if the product isn't 100% perfect, they still will supply some missing elements of the total solution. But they actually create some competition in terms of the kind of products that they buy. And they are the ones that will communicate across industry boundaries. They are the trendsetters. They're the ones that will be the first ones in line to buy your product and set a trend. They're happy to do that. Next, you have the early majority or the pragmatists. These people are only comfortable when evolutionary changes in business practices actually give them some enhancements in productivity. So what this means is they wait for evidence from the early adopters before they actually put their money on the table for your product. They don't actually like to have a lot of disruption to their daily life. They want to see in technology to be proven that it works before they actually pay for it. So they want evidence that it is reliable, it's going to fit into my life, I'm making a good decision. They will analyze it before they buy. But when they buy because somebody similar to them or in the same industry has actually referred them and recommended a product. So they will do their research, but they will also find people that fit in with their way of looking at the world and actually go, okay, if you're using it, maybe I should use it too. So they look for reference points in people. They are actually the majority of your market as well. So they have a bit of a herd mentality. They want to move together. They want to avoid risk by picking the technologies that other people are using. But once they make the decision, they want it to be implemented very quickly. So what they look for is industry standards. So this is your mass market. These are the people that you will reach once your product has been tested. Then you have the late majority. These people are incredibly technology shy and they're very, very risk averse. They're also very price sensitive. They require something that is pre-assembled, a bulletproof solution. It's working 100%. It doesn't have any problems, and there are no complaints. The thing that motivates them to buy whatever is new technology at the time is actually to keep up with the competitors in their industry. And they actually rely on a single trusted advisor to tell them this is 100% reliable, you have to buy this product. And then finally, you have the Lagards or the skeptics. These people do not embrace technology at all. They feel that technology is a hindrance to operations, but the only reason why they will invest in technology is if all of the alternatives are worse. So these people are the ones that will only embrace new, let's say, conference calling technology in the workplace if nothing else is available. They're the ones who will hold on to the old way of working for as long as they can because that's their comfort zone. But they will move on to new technology when they cannot use any of the old technology. So back in the old days, when PCs were first introduced, these people probably still wrote by hand on paper or used a typewriter, and only moved to a PC when typewriters were thrown out. So they're their kind of people. So when you look at this spectrum, let's go back to the map. Let's not go back to the map. Hold on one second. We'll go all the way back. Where do you think you fit in? Are you an innovator? Are you somebody who tests new technology and you're an alpha or beta tester? Are you an early adopter where you are enthusiastically buying an expensive product because it's a great new technology and you want it in your life? Are you the early majority where you wait to see the evidence before you buy? Are you the late majority where you actually get referrals from one person? Or are you a laggard where you think actually new technology isn't that interesting to me, I'll only use it when there's no other alternative? Which category do you fall into? All right. Now let's have a look at what we call the chasm. The chasm is the gap between early market and mainstream market. So this is the idea of visionaries versus pragmatists. So these are the early adopters, okay? The visionaries are the early adopters, and the pragmatists are your mass market. The visionary market is saturated, but the mainstream market is not yet ready to buy. That's what the chasm is. So you're in that middle ground where it's like, okay, you're still trying to get the visionaries on board, but your product or the perception of your product isn't quite ready to go to mass market. So it also means that the marketing that was successful with the visionaries just isn't effective with the pragmatists. This is a chasm. So when you're in this place, what do you do when you want your product or service to reach mass market? So the visionaries and the pragmatists are actually fairly separate. Okay, they don't want to interact with each other. They don't need to. They want different things. The visionaries are adventurous, they think big, they spend big, they want to be the first to implement new ideas in their industry, and they think that pragmatists are a little pedestrian. Whereas pragmatists sort of stay within the zone of reasonable and within their budget. They make slow and steady progress, and they think visionaries are dangerous. So the both of them are almost complete opposites, and they don't mix. There's no way they meet in the middle. They have a very different way of thinking and viewing life. So let's have a look at how you would market to a visionary. So you're in the very, very early stages of your product. So you want to give them very high level, customized tech support that actually becomes quite costly if you really want to bring the visionaries on board. But actually, it's a bit of a catch-22 because if you don't have that initial source of revenue, you're not going to get your product into mass market. So you have to decide How much are we willing to spend to get the visionaries on board in order for us to know that our product is worth it? So at some point, you have to realize maybe our product isn't quite there yet, but what is that point? Sometimes this means that your product might be released a little bit too early. Okay, you might decide that it's time to go to the visionaries, but your product isn't quite ready. But your goal will be to establish a reputation. It's a very exciting time to actually test your product in the market. But the brilliance of your product is rewarded and it's driven by the engineering of the technology that you put into it. And the focus is that you want to develop the best possible solution. So this is the time where you and your team are super excited to get your product out there, but you have to weigh up whether it's actually worth the cost. So in the chasm, when you're in that chasm between the visionaries and the pragmatists, a business can actually take on more visionaries that it can actually handle. And it's at the point where it can't take on any more custom projects but then no pragmatists are actually ready to buy. And the early market becomes saturated and there's a revenue gap. There's a revenue growth, but it either sort of tapers off or it declines completely. And in your team, they become a little bit disillusioned in terms of like, what are we doing here? Is this really worth it? Should we invest anymore? And maybe your venture capital starts to run out. The market strategy that you use that will lead to success in selling to the visionaries might not actually help you sell to the pragmatists, and you have to make a decision. Are we actually going to move forward or not? So your goal as a firm to get your product out into the market is to minimize the amount of time you spend in the chasm. So what new strategies do you need to put in place to reach the mainstream or mass market? So what do you actually have to do in order to reach those people? What we advise that you can do is pick a single target market with a very specific application and get to know them, understand them, and market to them. So in your research and development, you'd have to build an interface to legacy systems. So where is a customer at now? And where is your product and how can you bridge that gap for them? Perhaps you want to work with partners and affiliates to sell your product. And you ride the line between service and engineering. So how far are you willing to service the customer and engineer the product for this customer? So when you're marketing to pragmatists, the seller of the product, the vendor, has to assume total responsibility for the complete end-to-end solution. So that you come to the market, the whole product ready to go. There has to be the hardware, the software, connectivity, training, support, the whole life cycle has to be available. And it actually requires some significant work with partners, and you must develop standards and compatibility for existing products and lifestyles in the market. In this stage, when you're marketing to pragmatists, customer service is absolutely vital. Your focus is on the best possible solution, okay? And you have to simplify the complexities in your product features in order for the customer to understand it and adopt it. There is brand competition, okay? So there'll be other people in the market that actually have a similar technology, if not the same technology you have. And so if that exists, then it means that actually there is a need for your technology in the market. So it's a sign of legitimacy. You want to complement strong technical skills with strong partnering skills. So find affiliates and partners that will market your product, whether they are just resellers or whether they are providers of similar complementary products to yours. And actually partner power changes with market evolution, so that the more complementary products and partners you actually partner with, the market will start evolving, hopefully in your favor. What about to the conservatives, the ones that will wait for 100% bulletproof before they buy? When you're marketing to them, you might want to make the product simpler. You might want to make it cheaper, so more affordable. You might want to make it more reliable. You might want to make it convenient for them. So you have to look at different angles. So they're not looking at adopting technology. They're not looking at some evidence before they buy. They want to know concretely, I can't move forward in my life without this. So how do you actually market to them? You market to them by making it cheaper for them to buy, so it's an easy decision. Or it's going to be more convenient to use, or it's going to make their lives more convenient, or it might just be a very simple technology to adapt. So when you're crossing the chasm, let's summarize what we discussed. So the whole product, the entire life cycle, is a critical success factor. Everything has to be pretty much fail-proof to get out in the market. Until a high-tech firm has established itself with the mainstream market, it hasn't proven itself. So you might have your early adopters who are flying the flag, but that doesn't mean that you've actually proven your product works. And to manage the mainstream market effectively, you as a firm must work with partners in a disciplined fashion that actually prioritize partners and gets your product out into the market. So when you are in the mainstream, and those that are successfully crossing that chasm typically experience dramatic sales increases when they enter the mainstream market. So you know you're in the mainstream market when your sales start to exponentially increase. Now let's take a look at the 3 phases in that area of growth, where we'll call it the tornado. Phase 1 is a bowling alley. So your new product is getting acceptance from niches within the mainstream market, but each niche needs expertise in that vertical market and will potentially lead to access to related markets as well. The second phase is the tornado itself. This is the period of mass market adoption when the general marketplace switches over to the new technology. It is driven by an application that provides compelling benefits to the mass market. So it's a killer app, it's going to do everything you want. And it requires strong operational excellence to keep up with demand. So this is the time when you are flying, your product is making it out the door very quickly, but you actually have to keep a handle on servicing your customers to make sure that they are saying good things, leaving good reviews, and talking about your product in the market to actually make it be adapted more. And the third phase is Main Street. This is when you've exponentially grown your sales and now you're actually stabilizing. So market growth starts to stabilize and you start focusing on cross-selling and upgrading to existing customers. So your product has been adopted in the market. People are raving about it, but the sales are not declining, but they're not increasing at the same rate either. So now what you do is you get to know your customers more and you start upgrading your product and you start adapting it to what your existing customers want. When you are selecting a market segment to sell to, you have to identify what we call the best beachhead. So this is a single target market that you will be pursuing in the mainstream. You can't afford as a business to pursue many segments at once because it's expensive and it's time consuming, and you might be adapting your product in too many different ways. So if you are appealing to many different segments, you have to put money and people and resources behind researching this market, talking to them, understanding them, figuring out what features and benefits they're looking for, and then adapting your product to that. But if you're looking at one market, that's fairly simple to do. You're understanding one segment. But if you're looking at 3 different segments, it can become very confusing. So let's have a look at how you will segment your market. So first of all, you divide the market into groups based on their common characteristics. And these could be their demographics, where they live, psychographics in terms of their values, their lifestyle, and you have a look at behavior variables. So how often do they use a product like yours? What benefits are they looking for? And when do they actually use a product like yours? So there are different ways you can segment the market depending on the product that you provide. So let's now take a look at examples of technology customer segments, and we'll call this Technographics, okay? On the one side, you have the Pessimists, and on the other side, you have the Optimists. So let's have a look at the Pessimists first. The less affluent of those are pretty much sideline citizens. They're probably unlikely to buy something you're selling. The more affluent are the handshakers, the traditionalists, and the media junkies. We're going to look at this in a bit more detail in a moment. Then on the other side, you have the optimists. The optimists, when they are less affluent, they are techno strivers, they're digital hopefuls, they're gadget grabbers. So they are not going to be spending a lot, but they will be spending something on technology. They're still interested. But the most affluent are the fast forwards, the new age nurturers, and the mouse potatoes. We'll look at those in a bit more detail. So on the pessimist side of things, and the less affluent ones are effectively not interested in technology. So if you are a technology company, this is not the segment that you'll be looking at because they simply will not be interested. It'll be very difficult to market to, and adoption will be slow if it exists at all. The Technographics, in terms of the pessimists and the most affluent, you first have a segment which is the handshakers. These people are typically older, okay? They're typically managers in business. They don't touch their computer at work, and they leave that to the younger assistants. And this applies to any technology that is used. So if they're the ones who think that the younger generation will use this technology, it's not relevant to them. The traditionalists are willing to use technology, but they're slow to upgrade. They're not convinced by upgrades and other add-ons, and they don't think that they should actually pay for them. So they will embrace your technology, but only to a certain extent. And then you have the media junkies. These will seek entertainment, but quite find much of it online, and they prefer TV and old media. Okay, so the pessimists are the ones that will not really adopt your technology, and if they do, it'll take a lot of work to market to them. Now let's have a look at the optimists. Okay, so on the less affluent side, you have the techno strivers. These use technology from their phones, and they use technology to actually gain an edge in their career. Then you have the digital hopefuls. These are families with a limited budget, but actually are still quite interested in new technology. So they're a very good candidate for the more affordable side of technology. And then you have the gadget grabbers. They actually prefer to go online for their entertainment, but they don't have a lot of cash to spend. So these will be the people that will pay for either Netflix or HBO or Amazon Prime, but they won't pay for all of them. Okay. And then on the more affluent sides of the optimists, you have the fast forwards. These people are in business, they are the big spenders, they're the early adopters of new technology, and they will buy technology for the sake of buying technology for themselves. Then you have the new age nurturers. These are also big spenders, but they focus on technology for their home. So they'll have a family PC, they'll probably get smart technology in the home. And then finally, you have the mouse potatoes. They are willing to spend whatever they want online, whatever they can, to get the latest techno entertainment. So they are very much online for their entertainment, and they are willing to spend whatever to get the newest technology. The first step then, when you are segmenting your market, is to evaluate and select your target market. So create the segments in terms of sales volumes or potential sales volumes, and then look at the growth rate of each segment, and also look at what competition you have within each segment. So you don't necessarily have to go to the segment that has the least competition, but you don't want to be in a segment where there's too much competition either. And then you have to assess within this segment that looks to be the most attractive, how able are we as a firm to meet the needs of that particular customer segment? So what exactly makes a good beachhead? They actually are the ones that will connect you to other market segments through word of mouth or similarities in the whole product need. So they're the ones that create a bridge between their segment and other segments. They typically have a very compelling one must-have reason to buy. So this means that when they purchase this new technology, it radically improves their productivity on already well understood critical success factors. So basically, I'm going to buy this product because it does a better job than my existing product. And so you as a firm have to be able to dominate in this segment with the whole product, and you have to be able to capture that customer segment in a very short period of time. So this implies that you have to know your customers as well as they know themselves, if not better. So what could be a compelling customer need? It could be that new technology provides dramatic improvements in their lives, and it gives you a competitive advantage as a firm in the industry. It's difficult to quantify, so therefore the pragmatists won't actually understand this. Only the early adopters will. New technology actually improves the productivity of your firm. Okay, this is more compelling to the pragmatists because they are going to be looking at why is it that this product increases my productivity. If it does, great. And that's when you're in that chasm, you can cross into mass market. Or the new technology actually reduces operating costs. So it might appeal to conservative customers, but it might be risky because they might think that the infrastructure isn't actually as well supported as it needs to be before they actually make the plunge to buy. So when you're segmenting, the fourth step is to actually position the product within that segment. So think about how the customer sees your product. What benefits do they see and what benefits do they not even realize? How is your positioning of your product relative compared to the competition that you have in the eyes of your customer? So if you're producing the next iPhone, what other smartphones are in the market that your customers can see that they could potentially buy? Or how does your product compare? So your positioning is important because you have to actually create the benefits and attributes to be compelling enough to appeal to those customers.